Well, as Carlin is in Nebraska, I thought I'm going to jump in on this family series. We're very appreciative of Carlin's messages as he's gone through family life God's way. As we think about just the different ways Scripture challenges us and encourages us and instructs us, Carlin has brought some great messages. If you're new around here or have been gone some recently, go back and you will be challenged and encouraged. And what I especially appreciate, I think you do too, is how it's very seasoned with grace. And obviously that's because God seasons everything he does with grace. And Carlin brings the teaching and some great practical insight into his word, but it is always filled with grace. Because if you're like me and you think about hearing some teaching or seeing the biblical instruction on family, it's pretty easy to start looking at all the quirky, weird, goofy stuff that goes on in your family and think, oh my goodness, I don't live up to God's standards. We feel like that so often or too often in everyday life, but man, especially in family. I'm always trying to convince my wife that don't worry, we're not abnormal. Other people have weird, quirky things going on or drama and trials and struggles. It's happening behind every door, in every family. Definitely the quirky things are going on, aren't they? How many of you guys would say you are or you have a mom that's just errs on the paranoid side of fear for her children? I mean, we could probably all raise our hand. And rightfully so, the world is scary. My mom, don't do this. If you have a mom, especially as they get into teenage years, I don't even know if these things exist anymore. But for some reason, my mom had a police scanner. You know what? Anybody? Do those even exist? I don't know. But every police call going on, my mom could hear. And literally weekend nights, as her teenage kids were out going around doing things, and I was a pretty good kind of church kid, I guess you'd say. So I wasn't doing horrible things on the weekends, but my mom was not convinced of that. And the problem with the police scanners, you can hear every call going out, but they don't describe who it is. They don't give names. And so my mom was convinced it was always me. I mean, whether it was a speeding ticket, Stephen could be driving right there, right now. If he left 30 minutes ago, that would be the exact plan. He was going too fast, I'm sure he was. Or worse than that, accidents. She was just convinced. And back then we didn't have cell phones. She couldn't call and go, are you okay? I heard there was an accident. It was not till I got home at 11 or 12, whenever I would come home, I was so worried that I heard there was a speeding ticket here, there was an accident there was someone breaking and entering into a house over here. I'm like, Mom, I wasn't breaking and entering. What are you talking about? We all have quirky things in our families, and that was one of many of mine growing up. But there is a lot of grace, yet there is a challenge to us in Scripture that when you think about family, it's hard to not consider a man named Joshua and a challenge that he gives us. He leaves one of the greatest legacies in Old Testament, and he leaves it for our households and for us as a people and a nation. And it's in Joshua 24, and we're going to look at that this morning, but more than just study this incredible statement, we're going to look at the context of this statement, and we're going to look at the context of Joshua's life. Because Joshua 24:15 is a passage that maybe a lot of you guys have on your walls at your homes, or you've seen it before. It's probably, if you go to Mardell's, it's probably all over on different artistic ways. And it's a beautiful, incredible statement of faith and a challenge to all of us who in any way give leadership to a home or ministry or church. But it was the life behind that statement that made it so powerful. It's so easy for us to put it on our wall. And as a parent, it's very challenging because this is a statement I want to give, but it's a statement I need to live. And so we're going to just hopefully be encouraged and challenged by this statement in Joshua 24, but also recognize there is grace. There is grace in the midst of this, and we're going to see that no one family has it all down, and no one leader of a family has it all down just right. Yet, we serve a God who is worthy to be served. And so let me just give a little bit of the setting of Joshua 24. They are in Canaan. They are in the promised land. The Israelites are there, and they are experiencing peace, one of the first times in so many hundreds of years for this people group. God had called them from so long ago, beginning with Abraham, that he promised Abraham that you will have your offspring will become a nation, you will inherit land, and you will be a blessing to the entire world. And Abraham, and the incredible stories of Abraham and Isaac, and as you move into Jacob and Joseph and his brothers, and moving as the Israelites moved into Egypt and were slaves there for 400 years. So we are hundreds of years later. And Joshua ends up, after the exodus out of Egypt that Moses leads, then Joshua ends up taking the torch from Moses to finally lead the Israelite people into that second part of God's Abrahamic covenant, the promise of land. And Joshua is the man who leads the people into that land. And now they're there. Once they got into the land, they cross the river and they overtake Jericho in a miraculous way, and then they move throughout the land, taking over the land that God had promised them. And Joshua is the leader. He is the great warrior and an incredible example as he trusts God, and they take the land that God had promised them so long ago. And when we get to Joshua 24, the battles are over. The land has been inherited. They've been dividing it out among the different tribes of Israel. And Joshua in 23 gathers the leaders of Israel in Shiloh and helps them remember the greatness of their God and what he's done in them. And then in 24, he gathers them again. And that's the context of this. In fact, this gathering is somewhat of a formal gathering in which he's going to make this statement of Joshua 24:15 and then call on them to reply and respond to it. So that's the setting. It is the promised land. It's beginning with Abraham. The battles are over, and now Joshua is near death. Joshua is near his death. And I'm going to read Joshua 24:14 and 15. And if you don't know what 15 is yet, if you're wondering what's on the walls of our houses, here it comes. Now, Joshua says, "Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your forefathers worshiped beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. What a great statement, one which we should all consider, whether you're leading a family or you've led a family and you're still maybe a patriarch, matriarch, a grandparent, to be able to say, we will serve the Lord. Whether you're a young person saying, one day I'm going to have a household that it's going to be a commitment to serving God in that house. But again, it's so much more than saying that. And we're going to see as we look at this a little bit later that Joshua lets the people know it's a lot more than just saying, oh yeah, we're going to serve God. There's a lot more to it. But the thing that makes this so powerful, the people here respond so positively to Joshua's question of choosing for yourselves who you're going to serve, is because they've seen a man live out a life of serving God. And so the big idea here is that the power is not in our words. It's not even in our position, or maybe if we read all the right parenting books and get it all down and go, if I do this and this and this, the power is in our lives we live. And ultimately, in where is our heart as a parent? Where is our heart? So we're going to look at 5 things that make Joshua's statement so powerful, and it's really the context of this. of this statement, and it's the context of really Joshua's life. So let's look at the first of these 5 things. As Joshua lived this life, giving an example to this very challenge, he showed them a man who served God. And number 1, Joshua appreciates his heritage. 24:1, it says, Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. And Shechem is just simply a place, a location in Israel that has a lot of history to it. It goes all the way back. In fact, when God gave the Abrahamic covenant hundreds of years ago, and he calls Abraham to leave, and he gives him the promise, and he takes him to Shechem. And he says, look around. This is the land that's going to be yours and your people's. That's where it was. Later, there's some battles fought there, and Joshua even had put an altar giving thanks and praise to God here at Shechem in the past for a battle that had been won by God. And so this is a very rich place of their tradition. And Joshua appreciates that heritage. Joshua understands this, that who we are as a people did not begin at our birth, but who we are as a person began well before you were even born. God is at work in our heritage in preparing us for a day such as this, that today you and I would be here for such a time as this. He has been at work in your family line and your heritage to bring you here. And we're going to look a little bit of that because obviously that looks incredibly different for so many of us. But Joshua understood that they were, and also we can say we are, a people of plan and purpose. As Jeremiah understood that God said, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb. He knit us together. He set Jeremiah apart. In the same way, he has set you and I apart for a purpose and to fulfill his plan for our lives. They have experienced the fulfillment of the promise that was given to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, the slavery in Egypt for 400 years, the wanderings in the desert, and now it's fulfilled. And here they are at Shechem at the end of Joshua's life to hear this incredible challenge, to remember and look back on their heritage. Before Joshua challenges them, he reminds them of their godly heritage. I don't know what your heritage is, but some of you may have an incredible family heritage of Christian people that have led you to where you are today. Some of you may be in a uniquely very special place, and that is God may have plucked you out of a very difficult, ungodly, worldly situation, lifestyle, family, and said, you know what, you're mine, and I'm going to start with you in this family line. And you have this incredible privilege to be the beginning of a godly heritage for your descendants after you. And probably most of us are somewhere in between, some spiritual heritage, some not so spiritual, and different things. For me, my Shechem is Caney, Kansas. Anybody been to Caney, Kansas? A few of you? Okay, yes, all right. And just recently, because I, like Joshua, realizes that our heritage is important, it's just 20 minutes from Bartlesville, where my wife and I both grew up, and I still have a couple of aunts there and some cousins. So we love to go to Caney, Kansas, and we get there once or twice a year. We'd like to go more often, but when we were off about a month ago, we had some chances. There's some great churches in Bartlesville we were going to attend, but I told my wife, I said, no, we need to go to the little Lutheran church in Caney that is really my Shechem. It's where I first remember just hearing about God. And it was through my grandmother and grandfather. My grandfather, who passed away when I was 11 years old, taught Sunday school from the time he was an adult, I believe 18, 19, 20, and taught Sunday school until he died in that church in Caney, Kansas. And he was a great man of faith. He impacted everyone he was around, and especially his family, his 4 children, and his 14 grandchildren. He impacted, as an 11-year-old who was still trying to figure out God, this man made an incredible mark in my life. And that mark in my life continued even after he passed away. Just through the heritage of us talking about him, hearing from my aunts the things that he did. In fact, what we usually do when we go to Caney, well, we went to church, which was very different than our experience here. And but it was yet very rich to be able to find within more of the traditions that they have there, more of the ritual that they have there to find and hear and listen to the truth that was woven within it. And then we go, as we always do, we go sit at my aunt's house that used to be where my grandmother and grandfather lived, and we sit and we talk. And one of the things that was really neat this year is the cousins were all busy. My cousins' kids, who usually my kids hang out with, were all busy. And usually my kids would end up running off with them to the park and doing stuff. And Garrett just told me, he said, I was kind of glad we didn't go run off and play with the other cousins this time, because I just like sitting there listening to everybody talk. And what we talk about is God. And what we talk about is my grandfather and the impact and the heritage that he has on our lives and his love for God. In fact, every time almost we go, my aunts bring out a couple more folders that were his handwritten Sunday school lessons. And we have them from the 50s, dating back to, I think, the 40s through the 70s, his handwritten Sunday school lessons. We're going to hear from one of those here in a little bit. That's my heritage. That's my spiritual heritage, Caney, and it's important to me for my kids to know that, to know a little bit about my grandfather, to know a little bit about my family, because who they are began before they were born. God was at work in our family. God was at work in our nation. We need to understand and respect our nation's heritage. This is really what Joshua is referring to here, is their national heritage, people of Israel, the people of God. We need to understand our church heritage. If you're consider Covenant your church home, you're a part of a church that about 30, boy, are we getting close to 35 years now, getting close, over 30 years ago, that God moved in some people's heart to start this church out of barren ground. There wasn't even land at the time. They were over at Check Hall. But God moved in the heart of men to start a church where God's word was held strongly to, that the inerrancy of Scripture was key and crucial, and that through men like Mike Fisher and Dr. Huff, that they were committed to discipleship. That this isn't going to be a church to go with the flow and the whims of what the society says, but we are going to build and make disciples at Covenant Community Church. And that happens through man to man, woman to woman, small groups, teaching, encouraging, and building disciples. That's the heritage of this church, and that's what you're now a part of. And we need to know that and recognize that. Heritage is important. Joshua knew that. He respected that. He appreciated that. And we need to pass on the heritage that we have to the future generations. Another part that really ties hand in hand with our heritage is Joshua remembers God's faithfulness. See, in the midst of our heritage, we can point to time and time again where God showed himself to be faithful. God did the work. God was there for us. Here's where there's some encouragement. Consider this. In the midst of the Israelite heritage, there is drama like none other. Go back, starting in Genesis 12 and the beginning of Abraham. There's failure in each of these men. As the Israelites called themselves, we are the people of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Well, there is failure in each of those guys' lives recorded forever in history. The drama that plays out, if we could only have the details of the 400 years of slavery, I'm sure there was some struggles and some difficulties and trials like none other. The heritage isn't a testimony to our faithfulness. It is a testimony to the faithfulness of God. That's what we want to pass on to the future generations. Yeah, we have some great heritage. We have some struggles. We have drama in our own life behind our own doors. But it doesn't change the fact that God is faithful. God is there for us. God is at work in spite of us, in spite of our faithlessness. Joshua understood that from the very beginning when he's called out to be one of the 12 spies to go check out the promised land. And along with Caleb, they're the only two that understand and say, you know what? God is going to be faithful. He's called us to take that land. We can do it because of God. And the other 10 spies are fearful. They don't want to go into battle, and they convince the people to wait. And they wait they do for 40 more years until Joshua is able to lead them finally into the promised land. Joshua lived a life of trusting the faithfulness of God. And here in chapters 23 and 24, his closing statements of his life are all about remember your heritage and how faithful God has been to us. That's what we want to pass on to the generations after us. How has God been faithful to you? Do you talk about how God has worked in your family with your kids? Do you point out where God has worked in your life? Do the generations under you and I know, do they know our testimonies of God's faithfulness? Do they know how you met your spouse and how God brought you together? What a great testimony that so often is. Just these stories after stories. Are we passing on to our children and our grandchildren how God brought us together? How God did these things. I want my grandkids, I'm still ways away, Lord willing, from that. But I want them to know that I met their grandmother at Murphy's Steakhouse in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, with our college group at church. And that both of us walked out that night going, I could marry that person. I want my grandkids to know that story because it was the faithfulness of God bringing us together. Joshua remembered and passed on his heritage and how God was so faithful through that. And Joshua recognized that all this, who they are, the victories they've won, the battles they fought, is not by his strength. One of my favorite verses in the Old Testament is Zechariah 4:6. Not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. And the context of this is much later as they're trying to rebuild the temple. And God reminds Zechariah, hey, it's not by the strength of man, but my Spirit is going to empower men to get this job done. And that's what Joshua understood. In Joshua 24, starting with verse 2, it says, Joshua said to all the people, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. And he begins going through their heritage and the faithfulness of God within that. But as you'll notice, over and over, the most common word is I. He's quoting God saying, I did this. I took, I brought, I rescued. Over and over, 18 times, I led, I gave. 18 times the word I is used. It is God who did this in the lives of these people. It is God's strength and by God's power. Joshua 23:10, he tells them this when he's talking about the faithfulness of God. It says, one of you routs 1,000. I'm reading from the NIV here. I know you might have the NAS there in front of you, but it says, one of you routs 1,000 because the Lord your God fights for you. They went up against all sorts of bad odds in the battles that they fought. And at times it was 1,000 to 1. But God fought for them. It is by God's power. As we consider saying, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, we need to recognize that we need God's help. That it's not as easy as just putting it up and saying, yep, that's us, we're going to serve the Lord. In fact, that's what the people of Israel, their response to this, that's really what they said. Verse 16 of Joshua 24, they said, far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve other gods. And down in verse 18 it says, we too, Joshua, we too will serve the Lord because he is our God. And Joshua makes this kind of dramatic turnaround as they say, yeah, God, we too will serve the Lord. Yeah, we too, we're going to put this up on our house and our walls. And he says, you're not able to serve the Lord. He's a holy God. He's a jealous God. It's not as easy as just saying it. We need God's help. We need his power. And I think one of the keys in relying on him and his power for this is to look at what he says in verse 23. Now then, said Joshua, throw away the foreign gods that are among you and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. And the people said, we will serve the Lord, our God, and obey him. To experience God's help, to live this life, to lead a family, to follow the principles of Ephesians, whether it's honoring your parents or whether it's not exasperating your children or whatever the case might be, we need God's help and his strength and his power. And the key isn't just saying, I'm going to serve God, but it's to get rid of idols, things that are coming in the way between me and my God, and it's to yield my heart to him. As a leader of a home, we need leaders of homes who are yielded to God. Because it's only when we turn ourselves over to God that then he can empower us to do what he's called us to do. And it's very challenging and convicting because so often as a parent, we want more out of our kids than we're asking of ourselves. But we need to be people of God who are getting rid of idols, things that coming between me and him, and totally all out yield to God. Bill Bright describes being filled with the Spirit, being directed and empowered by God. And the word he uses so often is yield. Just yield. Turn it over. Turn your lives to him. And he will then empower you to do whatever he's called you to do. The best parenting tip, I got another parenting tip at the end, but really I have one parenting tip because I don't know how to do this parenting thing. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure it out. But the one tip I have is this. This is what I hope my kids remember. They're probably going to go, I don't remember Dad ever saying that. But this is the thing, the drum I try to beat with my kids is when I'm telling them, this is what I need you to do. You should not be treating your sister this way. You should not do this or that or whatever it is. I always say, I try to end it with, but you know what? You can't do it. You're going to keep doing that unless you ask God to help you. God will help you do it. So I try to encourage them and to just say, just do this for me. Don't tell me you're never going to hit your sister again. Tell me you'll pray and ask God to help you never hit your sister again. It's that simple. And you know what? They'll fail and I'll fail again and we'll all fail again, but we need God's help. That's my one parenting tip for you is rely on God's power as a parent, as a student, as a child. Yield your hearts to him and he'll empower you for whatever it is he's called you to do. Number 4, Joshua was committed to the mission. He was committed to the mission. The mission that he was called to, he was committed to that first and foremost. We see that at the beginning of Joshua and when he's ready to go take the promised land. We see that when Moses passes the torch to him. It doesn't mean he wasn't scared. And Moses told him over and over and over, be strong and courageous, reminding him that it is the Lord's power through you. Be courageous. Fight the battles. And Joshua, as fearful as it might have been at times, he was committed to that mission. And so when a man stands before you as your national leader and says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, they're able to say, yeah, he's done it. He's been committed, and he has served God wherever God's called him to go. And he has taken us and led us into this land that we now live because he was committed to what God had called him to do. And it reminds me of Paul to Timothy. In 2 Timothy, another one of just a great letters of legacy that Paul leaves. The last writings we have of Paul are 2 Timothy, as he's just challenging him to carry the torch on. And throughout it, hey, God did not give you a spirit of timidity, but of power and love and self-discipline. And he encourages Timothy to stand strong and be courageous throughout that book. Because Timothy had a great mission to fulfill, and he needed to trust God to do it. And Joshua was committed to his mission. He was strong and courageous. And what I would like to challenge myself with, and what we need to challenge ourselves with is, are we committed to God's mission? Or are we trying to be good people in a good church and try to leave it at that? Or are we committed to the mission God's put before us? Do we want to raise good, self-respecting children? Or do we want to raise a generation who is committed to fulfill God's mission for them? It's very challenging to me, but I think that we need to allow God to search our hearts, to consider what our commitment to his mission is, that he's given each and every one of us as believers to go and make disciples of all nations. And we need to really consider where is our heart and our call to that. And then challenge our kids to pick up that torch. To, live in ways, and whatever you do for the glory of God, but make sure the mission of reaching kids, of reaching friends, reaching peers, and reaching the world is always before us. Joshua's mission led and directed everything he did, the mission that God had given him. You know, this needs to start early in our homes. Helping our kids see the mission is important. You know, we could probably ask a challenging question as a parent is, do our kids know what's really important to us? And the answer is yes. And the hope is, do they know that the mission that God's called us to is what's really important to us? And here's my hope as a family ministry at Covenant Community Church, that more and more we can grow in doing this mission thing together as a church and as families. That one of the statistics that we hear and are so fearful of so often and is really directing a lot of what church strategy looks like today is the statistic of children who leave the church as they grow up and move into college and adult life. And I've seen the statistics, they're all different. I'm not so worried about the numbers, but so many of our young people who grow up in church leave the church in their early adult years. And whether this is part of it or all of it or just a small part, I don't know. But if church is something you just go to, then it's pretty easy to just bail out on in the midst of a busy world and a lot of other things drawing your attention. But if the church is something we belong to and we have a purpose and a calling to, then it's a lot easier to bail out. Because when you bail out, you realize you're leaving your responsibility of being a part of this incredible mission that God has given to us as his people. And I think that we need to help our kids, and we need to be involved with our kids together in the mission that God's called us to. Start early. One of the funny things in our house was when Anna was little, she would come to us and had this little kids tract, and she was 2 or 3 years old, and she was complaining because Grace kept trying to read this to her and trying to get her to pray at the end of this tract or whatever, because Grace wanted her little sister to know the Lord and to accept Christ. But as early as that, but yet moving on, one of the things that was really powerful in our community group this last year was when Kelly and Jan McGee came in and Jan talked about Reach Ministries. And the beginning of that, it's been over 10 years now that we've been involved with Reach Ministries. And Donna Nelson and Jan and Renee Buchanan felt called to that mission. And one of the things that was so powerful was they were right where so many of ours in our community group were at that time with young kids. And Jan and all their answers was, we can't come here to this Bible club, to this apartment complex every single week and give ourselves and start investing in all these kids and families that need help, because we have our own kids at home that we're busy and active and doing things with. But you know what? They did it anyway. And they started going, and you know what they did? They brought their kids with them. And the quote that stuck with me from that community group was after now, the McGees, their kids are almost all grown. Can't quite get rid of Landon yet, but they're getting there. Caitlin's sitting over here on UW mission for the summer. But one of the quotes was that Kelly said to Janie, said, I think Bible Club's the best thing we ever did for our family. It was the best thing they did because they were on a mission together. It wasn't always pretty, I'm sure, and they had their struggles and along the way. But they were together as a family on the mission. We need to be committed to God's mission. And I want to see us, I think God might be leading us as a church to see families be involved on a mission and doing it together more and more. The final part of Joshua's message that made it so powerful to these people was that it really came ultimately from his love for God. And really, that's the best parenting tip there is. Love God with all of your heart. Just love God. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes, and this book's going to tell you to do it this way and this that way. Love God. And Joshua loved God, and that's why he was committed to the mission. That's why he was empowered by God. Because as 1 John reminds us that we love God because he first loved us. Joshua in 22, verse 5, as he's sending off some of the tribes back to the other side of the Jordan River, he tells them, be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways and obey his commands, to hold fast to him and serve him with all your heart and your soul. Just reminding them of what Moses had given them. The most important thing is to love the Lord your God. In chapter 23, verse 11, again, with the leaders of Israel in this same context. So be very careful to love the Lord your God. Because that is first and foremost. To have yielded hearts, to be worshipers of God because we love him. We recognize the heritage he's given us, how he's plucked me out of this situation and rescued me by the grace of God. And he loves me so very much, and he loves each of us so very much that we would respond with understanding how great this God is, and that we would just love him with all of our heart, with all of our soul. And so, the power of our parenting, the power of our leading, the power of just trying to make a stand for God isn't in what we say as near as much as where our heart is. And so I hope that we would allow the context of Joshua's life to challenge us. And just in closing, some of the things that I would say here is that as we commit our homes, we want to commit our church and our families, and most importantly, our hearts to Christ. Because as he's called these people, choose for yourselves this day who you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I hope that's a heart commitment that we can just remake or recommit to this morning. And number one, just recognize God has placed you in the family you're in for his purposes. Be appreciative of your heritage. Be thankful if he has plucked you out of a heritage that was not following after God, because that in and of itself is a beautiful story and testimony. And then give thanks for the faithfulness God has demonstrated to you. So often my prayer life lacks, and when I think of this statement right there, I should be able to pray continually, day after day, when I think of where God has shown himself faithful. To be able to give thanks in so many ways for the faithfulness he has demonstrated to me and to you. And let's make God's mission for our families our mission. Let's not allow the world to squeeze us into his mold of what a family should do and be and the activities should be involved in. Let's first and foremost make God's mission the mission for our families. And then again, let's choose this day. Are we going to allow the Word of God to change our hearts, to encourage us, to challenge us, and commit our homes, our church, our families, and again, most importantly, our hearts to the Lord Jesus Christ? The name Joshua means the Lord is my salvation. The Lord is salvation. And Joshua, as we look at his life and we realize where we fall short so many ways, we're reminded that the Lord provides the way of salvation. And the third part of that promise to Abraham is that the world would be blessed through this Israelite people. And you and I are part of this story, Part of our heritage is right here in the book of Joshua, because we now, thousands of years later, are part of this same heritage in regard to the Lord did bless the world through the Israelite people by sending his son, Jesus, so that whoever believes in him, whoever puts their trust in what he did on the cross, would experience the forgiveness of God and have eternal life. That's the heritage that's offered to every single one of us this morning. The Lord provides a way of salvation, and that's through Jesus Christ. And so, wherever you come in this morning, whatever your heritage has been or is, make sure this morning that you understand how much God loves you and that his love was demonstrated by offering his son Jesus to pay for your sins so that you can have eternal life and be forgiven of all your sins. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so very much for offering Jesus to pay for our sins. That from the beginning of history, you had a plan, and you have worked that plan, and here we are today. The opportunity to believe by faith in the provision that you've offered in your son, Jesus. And God, as we look at the life of the Israelites so long ago, and we see Joshua in the life that he lived and the commitment that he had made to follow you, we pray that we would experience your power to follow through on the same commitment. That we, like those people that heard that message firsthand, would say, yes, we will serve you, God. And that we would have hearts yielded to you. That we'd be turning away from the things that get in our way between us and you. And our hearts would be offered to you this morning. And Lord, I pray that if anyone here has never put their faith in you, that they would recognize the incredible gift you offer in Jesus. Lord, I pray that families here this morning would be encouraged and challenged, and that you would just continue a great work in the life of Covenant Community Church. We thank you and love you in Christ's name. Amen.